The cold was the first thing Han Jay felt. It was not the cold of winter or the cold of space. It was the cold of death, creeping out of his bones as his body remembered how to live again. His eyes opened slowly. The light above him was dim and red. Emergency lights. That was wrong. The revival process was supposed to happen under bright white lights, with doctors standing ready and soft music playing to ease the transition. Instead, there was only the red glow and a terrible silence. Han Jay tried to move, but his muscles would not obey. 600 years of sleep had turned his body into stone. He lay there in his cryopod, staring at the ceiling, waiting for his heart to remember its rhythm. A voice spoke from somewhere above him. It was Arya, the ship's artificial intelligence. Her tone was calm, but Han Jay had commanded this ship long enough to hear the warning beneath her words. Captain Han Jay, emergency revival protocol initiated. Current date, November 14th, 2847. You have been in cryosleep for 612 years. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. 600 years. Their journey was only supposed to take 200. Something had gone very wrong. Han Jay forced his fingers to move. Bend his hands. Bend his arms. Slowly, painfully, he pulled himself up from the pod. The revival chamber stretched out before him, filled with thousands of cryopods arranged in perfect rows. Inside each pod, a human being slept, unaware that centuries had passed them by. 12,000 people. The last hope of Earth. They had left behind a dying planet, a world choked by pollution and war and despair. Their mission was simple: reach a new world, start again, give humanity a second chance. But 600 years had passed, and the emergency lights told Han Jay that their second chance might already be over. He stumbled through the chamber, his legs weak and unsteady. The ship felt wrong. The hum of the engines was different, deeper, and more strained. The air tasted stale, recycled too many times. Arya guided him to the medical bay, where the revival pods for senior crew members were already warming. Dr. Una Park was the first to wake. She gasped and coughed, fluid draining from her lungs, her body shaking with the shock of returning to life. Han Jay helped her sit up. Her eyes were wild with confusion, but she was a doctor, trained to stay calm in crisis. Within minutes, she was checking her own vital signs, then checking his. 600 years, she whispered. That is impossible. The cryopods were designed for 300 at most. We should be dead. But they were not dead. And as more crew members woke, Han Jay realized that something strange had happened during their long sleep. They should have been weak, their muscles wasted, their minds foggy. Instead, they felt strong, alert. Different. Sergeant Tae Kang was the third to wake. He was a soldier, hard and quiet, with eyes that missed nothing. He said little as he rose from his pod, but Han Jay saw him testing his reflexes, clenching his fists, moving with a speed that surprised even himself. Engineer Sora Lei came next. She went straight to the nearest computer terminal, her fingers flying across the keys. What she found made her face go pale. Captain, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We never reached the colony world. The ship changed course 400 years ago. Arya detected something and altered our path. Han Jay turned to the AI interface on the wall. Arya, explain. The artificial voice responded without emotion. 403 years ago, I detected an anomaly in our planned destination system. All signals from the colony targets ceased. I altered course to preserve the crew and seek alternative destinations. What kind of anomaly? Tae Kang asked. Unknown. All transmissions from the target system stopped within 72 hours. Similar cessation patterns were detected across multiple star systems in the following decades. Sorai Lee pulled up the communication logs on her screen. For the first 200 years of their journey, the ship had received regular signals from Earth, news broadcasts, scientific updates, messages from families who had stayed behind. Then, 380 years ago, the signals stopped, not slowly, not gradually. They simply stopped, like someone had turned off a switch. Earth, Anjay said. What happened to Earth? Arya's response was the worst thing he had ever heard. No transmissions have been received from Earth or any known human colony for 387 years. Status: unknown. Presumed silent. The medical bay fell quiet. 12,000 people slept in the chambers around them, dreaming of a home that no longer answered, dreaming of families who had been dead for centuries. Una Park sat down heavily on a medical bed. Sora Lee stared at her screen, tears running down her face. Even Tae Kong, who had faced death 100 times, looked shaken. Han Jae felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. He was the captain. These people, all 12,000 of them, were his responsibility. And right now, they were floating through an unknown galaxy with no destination, no home, and no idea what had silenced the stars. Wake the rest of the senior crew, he ordered. We need to know what we are dealing with. Over the next several hours, more pods opened. Pilot Hannah Cho took her place at the navigation console, her steady hands mapping their position. Lieutenant Dae Kim activated the tactical systems, scanning the space around them for threats. What they found was both hopeful and terrifying. They were not alone. The ship's sensors detected signals coming from a nearby region of space. Hundreds of signals, thousands, an entire civilization, living and communicating just a few light years away. But mixed with those signals were others. Warnings, distress calls, screens in languages no human had ever heard. And then Tae Kong found the marks. He had gone to inspect the outer hull using the ship's external cameras. What he saw made his blood run cold. Long scratches ran across the metal surface. Not damage from space debris. These were deliberate, precise. Something had found them while they slept. Something had examined them, touched them, left its mark upon their ship. Something knew they were here. Han Jae stood on the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was the answer to what had happened to Earth. Somewhere out there was the thing that had scratched their hull. They had left Earth as colonists, hoping for a peaceful new beginning. Now they were something else. Survivors, the last of their kind, waking up in a galaxy that had moved on without them. Whatever had silenced humanity, whatever had left those marks on their ship, Han Jae made a silent promise. They would find out the truth, and they would survive. No matter what was waiting for them in the dark. The Nexus ring was the largest thing Han Jae had ever seen. It hung in space like a metal god, a massive circular station that could hold millions of beings. Ships of every shape and size moved around it like insects around a hive. Some were elegant and curved. Others were rough and ugly, built for function rather than beauty. None of them looked human. The Horizon Dawn approached slowly, its engines damaged from centuries of drift. Hana Cho guided the ship with careful hands, avoiding the traffic lanes filled with alien vessels. Every sensor on the bridge screened warnings. Unknown contacts. Unknown weapons. Unknown everything. They see us, Dae Kim reported from his tactical station. Multiple ships are changing course. They are scanning us. Han Jae kept his voice calm. Let them scan. We are not here to fight. We are here for answers. The station sent a docking request in a language the computer could not translate. But the meaning was clear enough. A specific port lit up on the station's surface, guiding them in dot. As the ship entered the docking bay, the crew got their first look at alien life. Beings of every description moved through the crowded corridors visible through the viewport. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4, some on none at all. There were creatures covered in scales, creatures covered in fur, creatures that seemed to be made of living light. The galaxy, it seemed, was very full, and very afraid Han J noticed it immediately. The aliens moved quickly, nervously, always looking over their shoulders. They traveled in groups, never alone. Their eyes, whatever shape those eyes took, held the same expression: fear. The first alien to approach them was called Ren. He was small, barely reaching Han J's chest, with gray skin and large dark eyes. His species, he explained through a translation device, were the Nellos. Once they had numbered in the billions. Now there were less than 100,000 left. Ren stared at the humans with wonder and disbelief. "You are humans," he said, his voice trembling. "You cannot be humans. Humans are dead. Humans died long ago." "We were sleeping," Han J replied. "For 600 years. We just woke up." Ren laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Then you have woken into a nightmare." He led them through the station, talking as they walked. The story he told was terrible. 300 years ago, something emerged from the center of the galaxy. They called themselves the Pale Swarm. No one knew where they came from or what they truly wanted. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. The Pale Swarm moved from system to system, stripping planets bare. They took everything: resources, technology, people. Entire civilizations vanished in their path. The great empires that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years fell one by one. Earth was one of the first, Ren said quietly. Your people were young, new to space. The swarm came, and Earth went silent. We assumed your kind was extinct. The words hit the humans like physical blows. Una Park covered her mouth with her hand. Sora Lee leaned against a wall, her legs suddenly weak. Even Tai Kang, who showed so little emotion, closed his eyes in pain. Earth was gone. Everyone they had left behind, everyone they had hoped to see again someday, they were all dead. Had been dead for centuries. Han J forced himself to speak. What happened? Did anyone survive? Ren shook his head. We do not know. The swarm does not leave witnesses. Some say there are human colonies still hiding somewhere, but no one has seen proof. You 12,000 may be all that remain of your species. They walked in silence after that. The station's corridors stretched on forever, filled with the broken remains of 100 civilizations. Refugees, all of them. Survivors clinging to life in a galaxy that wanted them dead. In a crowded market square, they encountered another alien. This one was different from Ren. He was tall and proud, covered in green scales, wearing armor that marked him as someone important. His name was Veth, and he was a diplomat of the Corum Dominion. Veth looked at the humans with contempt. So the dead walk among us, he said. Ghosts from a forgotten world. Why have you come here? To remind us of failure? Han J met his gaze without flinching. We came looking for answers. We found a graveyard. Then you found the truth. Veth stepped closer, his reptilian eyes cold. The galaxy is dying, human. The swarm takes what it wants, and we give it freely, because fighting means death. Your species learned that lesson 300 years ago. Perhaps you should have stayed asleep. He walked away without another word, disappearing into the crowd. Ren watched him go with a sad expression. Do not blame him, the small alien said. The Corum were once warriors. Now they pay tribute to the swarm like everyone else. Submission has cost them their pride. Tai Kang spoke for the first time since they had left the ship. Everyone pays tribute? Everyone who wants to live. The swarm comes, and we give them what they ask. Resources, technology. sometimes people. It is the only way to survive. That is not survival, Taekung said. That is slow death. Ren looked at him strangely. There was something in the soldier's eyes that the alien had not seen in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was anger, not fear, not despair. Anger. Ren looked at the other humans. They all had it. The captain with his steady gaze. The doctor with her clenched fists. The engineer with her jaw set tight. These beings had just learned that their entire world was dead, that they were the last of their kind, that they had woken into a galaxy ruled by monsters. And they were not afraid. They were furious. You are strange creatures, Ren said slowly. Every species I know would be weeping right now, begging for shelter, asking how to hide. Han Jie looked out at the crowded station, at the thousands of beings living in fear, and felt something cold settle in his chest. This was what the galaxy had become, a place where survival meant surrender, where hope had died long before the people did. We are not going to hide, he said. We are going to find out what happened to our home. And then we are going to decide what comes next. Ren stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, a small smile crossed his gray face. It was the first time he had smiled in years. I think, he said quietly, that the galaxy is about to become very interesting. The archives of the Nexus Ring held the memory of 1,000 worlds. Every species that had ever passed through the station had left records behind. History, science, art, war. Everything was stored in the great data vaults beneath the station's surface. Han Jie requested access to anything related to Earth. The station's keepers, ancient beings who had long forgotten their own home worlds, granted his request without question. They seemed almost eager to help, as if the presence of living humans was a novelty they had never expected to see. What Han Jie found in those records changed everything. He sat alone in a dark room, screens glowing around him, reading the history of his species as written by alien observers. The early parts were familiar. Humanity's first steps into space, first contact with alien traders, the clumsy attempts at diplomacy. Earth had been considered a minor species, young and primitive, barely worth noticing. Then the pale swarm arrived, and everything changed. The records showed the swarm's approach toward Earth's sector of space. System after system fell silent. Species that had existed for millions of years vanished overnight. The great empires sent warnings, told everyone to submit, to pay tribute, to survive. Humanity refused. Han Jie leaned forward, his heart pounding as he read. Earth had looked at the approaching darkness and made a choice that no other species had made. They chose to fight. For 40 years, humans waged war against the pale swarm. They knew they could not win. The swarm was too vast, too powerful, too hungry. But they fought anyway. They built warships. They developed new weapons. They turned their colonies into fortresses and their moons into battlefields. The records showed alien observers watching in disbelief. Why were the humans fighting? Did they not understand that resistance was pointless? Did they not see that submission was the only path to survival? But humans kept fighting. They ambushed swarm harvesters. They rescued populations from doomed worlds. They died by the millions, but for every human who fell, they made the swarm pay in blood. In the end, they lost. Of course they lost. The swarm was unstoppable, but the records noted something remarkable. The conquest of human space took 40 years. The conquest of the Korim Dominion, 10 times larger and more advanced, had taken less than 5. The swarm had expected to sweep through human territory in months. Instead, they found themselves bleeding for every single world. One alien historian had written a single line that made Han Jie's eyes burn with tears. The humans were fools who challenged the unchallengeable. They died for nothing, but they died standing. Han Jay shared the records with his crew. They gathered in the ship's common room, reading in silence, seeing their forgotten ancestors' final stand for the first time. Una Park wiped her eyes. They fought for 40 years, knowing they would lose. They fought so others could escape, Sora Lay said, pointing to a passage in the records. Look, they created evacuation routes, helped other species flee while they held the line. Tai Kong stood apart from the others, his face unreadable, but his hands were shaking. We never knew, he said. We left Earth thinking our mission was the only hope. We never knew they would fight. Outside the ship, news of the human records spread through the station. Ren came to visit, bringing other curious aliens. They looked at the humans differently now, not as ghosts of a dead world, but as descendants of warriors. Even Veth came, though he tried to hide his interest. Foolishness, he declared. Your ancestors threw away their lives for nothing. The swarm still won. Did they? Dae Kim asked quietly. The records say the swarm lost more forces conquering Earth than any other campaign. They remember us. They remember the cost. Veth had no answer for that. While the crew studied history, Una Park studied them. Something had been bothering her since they woke up. The cryosleep should have damaged them. 600 years of frozen stillness should have left them weak, sick, barely alive. Instead, they were healthy. More than healthy. She ran test after test, checked every result twice, and finally called Han Jay to the medical bay. We are different, she told him, showing him the data. The long sleep changed us. Our cells regenerate faster. Our reflexes are quicker. Our immune systems are stronger than any human who ever lived. Han Jay looked at the numbers without understanding. How is that possible? I do not know. The cryogenic process was experimental. Maybe something in the preservation formula. Maybe radiation exposure during the journey. Maybe just evolution happening in ways we never expected. Una shook her head. All I know is that we are still human. But we are also something more. Han Jay thought about what this meant. 12,000 humans, enhanced by centuries of strange sleep, the last survivors of a species that had once made the galaxy's greatest predator bleed. He found Tai Kang in the cargo bay. The soldier had cleared a space among the crates and was training. His movements were fast, precise, deadly. Other crew members watched him, some trying to copy his techniques. You are preparing, Han Jay said. Tai Kang did not stop his training. The swarm is still out there. They know about the station. They will come eventually. And you think we can fight them? The soldier finally stopped. He turned to face his captain, sweat running down his face, his eyes burning with something ancient and human. Our ancestors fought them for 40 years with worse odds than we have. They did not fight to win. They fought because surrender was worse than death. He gestured at the crew members around him. These people feel the same way. I see it in their eyes. Han Jay looked at his people. Engineers learning to fight. Scientists practicing with weapons. Ordinary men and women who had signed up for a peaceful colony mission, now preparing for war. We do not know what we are facing, Han Jay said. No, Tai Kang agreed. But whatever comes, we will face it standing. Like our Ankh. Esther's did. Before Han Jay could respond, an alarm rang through the station. Ren appeared moments later, his gray face pale with terror. Captain, he gasped. A swarm scout ship has been detected. They are coming to the station. The galaxy was about to learn that the humans had awakened. And the humans were about to learn exactly what they were up against. Han Jay straightened his shoulders. Whatever happened next, whatever horror was approaching, he knew one thing for certain. They would not kneel. The pale swarm harvester emerged from darkness like a nightmare, given form. It was massive, larger than the Nexus ring itself, a twisted mountain of metal and organic matter that seemed to absorb the starlight around it. Smaller ships swarmed around it like flies around a corpse. The station fell into panic. Aliens ran through the corridors, screaming in 100 languages. Some rushed to their ships, hoping to flee before the harvest began. Others fell to their knees, praying to gods who had never answered. Han Jay watched the chaos from the observation deck. Beside him stood Ren, trembling with fear, and Veth, whose scales had gone pale. "They are here for tribute," Veth said, his voice hollow. "We must prepare the offering. Resources, technology, volunteers." "Volunteers?" Una Park asked. "People. The swarm sometimes takes people." Veth could not meet her eyes. "It is the price of survival." A shuttle detached from the harvester and approached the station. It carried the delegation that would collect the tribute. Han Jay watched it dock, watched the station's leaders rush to greet their masters, watched the galaxy accept its chains. The leader of the swarm delegation called himself High Warden Torek. He was ancient, his body a twisted fusion of flesh and machine, his eyes empty of anything resembling mercy. He had overseen the consumption of 1,000 worlds. He had watched civilizations beg for their lives and granted them nothing but death. When he entered the station's central hall, every alien present lowered their heads. Every alien except the humans. Torek noticed them immediately. His empty eyes fixed on Han Jay with something that might have been curiosity. "Humans," he said, his voice like metal scraping stone. "We thought your kind extinct. A pleasant surprise. The archives will be interested in specimens." Han Jay stepped forward. "We are not specimens. We are not tribute. We are not yours." The hall went silent. Aliens stared at him in horror. No one spoke to a warden this way. No one refused the swarm. Torek tilted his head, studying Han Jay like an insect. "You misunderstand your position. You have two choices. Submit and be preserved. Resist and be erased. There is no third option." Han Jay looked at his crew. Tay Kang stood ready, his hand near his weapon. Hannah Cho had positioned herself near an exit. Dae Kim was watching the swarm soldiers, counting them, measuring distances. Una Park and Sora Lee stood together, fear in their eyes but steel in their spines. 12,000 humans against an empire that had consumed a galaxy. The odds were impossible, but humans had never cared much about odds. Han Jay turned back to Torek. "You are right. There is no third option." He touched a device on his wrist. "So we choose neither." His voice broadcast across every speaker on the station, reaching every ship in the docking bays, every refugee hiding in the corridors, every being who had spent their life in fear. "We choose to fight." The station erupted into chaos. But this time, the chaos was planned. Cargo ships that Sora Lee had spent hours modifying suddenly powered up. Their engines had been rigged to overload, turning them into massive bombs. They launched toward the harvester, piloted by automated systems. Screaming across the void. The swarm fighters scrambled to intercept, but they were too slow. The first cargo ship hit the harvester's hull and exploded. Then the second. Then the third. Fire bloomed across the monster's surface. Inside the station, Tay Kang and his trained volunteers attacked the swarm delegation. They moved with speed that shocked the aliens watching. The enhancements from their long sleep, the strength that Una had discovered, it was all real. Human soldiers fought like demons, pushing the swarm forces back through the corridors. Hana Cho ran for the docking bay. Her mission was suicide, and she knew it. She was going to fly a decoy run, draw as many swarm fighters away from the station as possible. Give the others time to complete their mission. She climbed into a small shuttle and launched into the battle. Swarm fighters turned to pursue her, dozens of them, their weapons lighting up the darkness. She flew like she had never flown before, dancing between laser blasts, spinning through debris, laughing as death reached for her again and again. On the station, Dae Kim coordinated the attack from a damaged console. Sparks flew around him. The screen kept flickering, but he refused to stop, refused to let the plan fall apart. He guided the cargo bombs, directed the ground teams, kept track of Hana's desperate flight. She is running out of time, he reported to Han Jae. They are closing in. Han Jae made a decision. Tae Kang, take your team to the harvester. Board it. Find a way to hurt it from inside. Tae Kang did not hesitate. He gathered his best fighters and moved toward the shuttle bay. They were going to board a swarm harvester. It was madness. It was impossible. It was human. They launched in a captured alien shuttle, using the chaos of battle as cover. The harvester loomed ahead of them, wounded but still deadly. Tae Kang found an entry point where the cargo bombs had torn open the hull. Inside, the harvester was a nightmare. Organic walls pulsed with sickly light. Strange sounds echoed through twisted corridors. Swarm creatures moved in the shadows, hunting for intruders. The humans fought their way through. They found what looked like a control center and planted explosives everywhere. They had no idea what most of the systems did. They just knew that destroying them would hurt Dot outside. Hanacho's luck finally ran out. A swarm fighter caught her shuttle with a direct hit. Her engines failed. Her ship began to spin toward the harvester. She smiled. If she was going to die, she was going to die doing damage. She aimed her crippled shuttle at the harvester's main sensor array and fired every remaining weapon she had. The explosion was beautiful. In the control center, Tae Kang triggered the explosives. The harvester shuddered. Systems began to fail. The great monster that had consumed worlds was bleeding, dying, falling apart from the inside. High Warden Torek retreated to his shuttle as the station's forces, inspired by the human attack, turned on his remaining soldiers. For the first time in his ancient existence, he felt pain. A human weapon had wounded him. Human blood burned on his armor. He escaped as the harvester began to collapse. But he looked back at the station, at the tiny human ship that had started this rebellion, and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. The harvester fell. The greatest machine of destruction the swarm had ever built, crippled by 12,000 humans, who had been asleep for 600 years. The aliens on the station watched in stunned silence. Then someone began to cheer. Then another. Then thousands. They had seen the impossible. They had seen the swarm bleed. And in the wreckage of battle, they found Hanacho. Her shuttle had crashed on the harvester's surface, torn apart by the impact. But she was alive, pulled from the debris by Tae Kang's team. Broken, burned, but breathing. She opened her eyes and looked up at Tae Kang. Did we win? He helped her stand. Around them, the harvester was dying. Above them, the galaxy was watching. We did more than win, he said. We showed them what humans do. Hana smiled through the pain. What is that? Tae Kang looked out at the stars, at the future that had suddenly become possible. We fight. The news traveled faster than light. Every communication system in the galaxy carried the story. A pale swarm harvester had been destroyed. Not by a great fleet. Not by an ancient empire. By a handful of humans on a damaged colony ship. Beings who had lived their entire lives in fear stopped what they were doing and listened. They heard the name of the Horizon Dawn. They heard about Captain Han Jae and his crew. They heard that High Warden Torok The ancient monster who had consumed 1,000 worlds had been wounded, had been forced to retreat. For the first time in 300 years, the galaxy remembered what hope felt like. On the Nexus Ring, the aftermath of battle was everywhere. Debris floated in space. Damaged sections of the station were sealed off. The dead were counted and mourned. But there was something else in the air now. Something electric. Han J stood before the station's council. The room was packed with representatives from every species on the station. Aliens who had spent their lives in submission now looked at the human captain with something new in their eyes: curiosity, respect, and for some, the first faint spark of courage. "You have doomed us all," one council member said. His species were the Quorum, Veth's people. "The swarm will return. They will destroy this station and everyone on it." "They will return," Han J agreed. "They always do. But they returned before, did they not? They have been taking your tribute for centuries. How many of your people have you given them? How many worlds have you watched them consume?" The council member had no answer. Han J stepped forward, addressing the entire room. "I do not promise victory. I do not pretend this will be easy. The swarm is vast. They are powerful. They have crushed every enemy they have faced." He paused. "Except one. Today we proved that they can bleed, that they can fall, that they can be hurt." His voice rose. "You have lived in fear for 300 years. You have surrendered everything you have, and still they take more. You call that survival? That is not survival. That is waiting for death." He pointed out the viewport, toward the wreckage of the Harvester, still drifting in space. "That monster out there was supposed to be invincible. It is burning. We put it there. And we are not special. We are just humans. A species you thought was dead. A species that should have been weak after 600 years of sleep." Han J looked around the room, meeting every eye. "If we can do this, what could you do? What could all of us do together?" Silence hung in the air. Then a voice spoke from the back of the room. "He speaks truth." Everyone turned. It was Veth, the Korean diplomat who had once dismissed the humans as ghosts. He walked forward, his scales catching the light, his face hard with emotion. "I called these humans fools," he said. "I told them their ancestors died for nothing. I was wrong." He stopped before Han J and did something that made the entire council gasp. He knelt among the Korim. Kneeling was the highest form of respect. It meant absolute loyalty. It meant willingness to die for another. No Quorum had knelt to anyone in generations. "My sword is yours," Veth said. "My ship, my life. I am tired of being afraid." The silence shattered. Other voices rose. Ren stepped forward, his small body trembling with emotion. "The Nellos have nothing left to lose," he declared. "We will fight." More aliens joined them. Species that had been enemies now stood together. Traders offered their ships. Scientists offered their knowledge. Warriors who had forgotten how to fight remembered their old skills. Han J watched the transformation happening before him. One battle had changed everything. One moment of defiance had lit a fire that was now spreading across the station. Later, he found Una Park in the medical bay. She was treating the wounded from the battle, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. Hanacho lay nearby, bandaged and sleeping, alive against all odds. "You should rest," Han J told her. Una shook her head. "There is too much to do. Too many injured. Too many people who need help." She looked up at him. "Is it true? Are they really joining us?" "They are. Ren, Veth, dozens of others. They want to fight." Una smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. 11,000 of our people are still in cryosleep. They do not know what has happened. They do not know about Earth. When we wake them, they will learn, Hanjie said. They will grieve. And then they will do what humans have always done. They will adapt. They will survive. He put his hand on her shoulder. You saved us, Yuna. Your work with the cryogenics, your discovery about our enhancements. None of this would have been possible without you. She looked at the sleeping pods in the corner of the medical bay. 11,000 humans, dreaming of a home that no longer existed. The last of their kind. Then let us make sure we are worth saving, she said. Across the galaxy, the pale swarm gathered. High Warden Torak had returned to the core, his wounds healing, his fury burning cold. He stood before the swarm's highest council, creatures so ancient they had forgotten their own origins. Humans, he reported. They survived. They have awakened. The council did not react with concern. The swarm had faced defiance before. All defiance ended the same way. They destroyed a harvester, Torak continued. They wounded me. Now the council stirred. This was unexpected. This was interesting. The humans must be exterminated, Torak declared. Every last one of them. They are a disease. If we allow them to spread, others will follow their example. The tribute system will collapse. The council agreed. The order was given. Every swarm force in the galaxy would hunt the horizons. Dawn, every human would be found and destroyed, but the swarm did not know what was happening on the Nexus Ring. They did not see the ships being armed, the alliances being formed, the old weapons being pulled from hidden vaults. They did not see the galaxy waking up. In the cryogenic chamber of the Horizon Dawn, Yuna Park stood before the sleeping pods. 11,000 humans waited inside, dreaming of Earth, dreaming of family, dreaming of a future that would be very different from anything they expected. She initiated the revival. Sequence dot lights flickered on. Pods began to warm. Hearts that had been frozen for 6 centuries started to beat again. On the bridge, Hanjie received the report. His crew was waking up. His people were returning to life. He looked out at the stars, at the darkness that had consumed his home world, at the challenge that lay ahead. The swarm was coming. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, but for the first time in 300 years, the darkness had something to fear. Humanity was awake. And humanity was angry. The ember had been lit. Now it was time to see how far the fire could spread. Far away. In a hidden place known only to a few, Ren began to write. He called his work The Ember Chronicles, and he started with the simple truth that the galaxy was finally beginning to remember. They slept through the end of everything. They woke to find the universe on its knees. And they decided, as humans always do, that kneeling was never an option.